The forgotten princess every noble cat laughed at, until the ancient crown chose her. The mourning princess, Seraphine Ashvale, was disowned. The royal bells didn't ring. They laughed instead. The sound echoed through the marble halls as every noble cat watched the quiet princess walk away with nothing, never realizing the oldest magic in the kingdom had already chosen its true ruler. The kingdom of Luminera shimmered beneath cotton candy skies. Pastel pink clouds drifted above towering castles painted in creams, soft blues, lavender, mint green, and gold. Crystal rivers curled between villages where every cat wore elegant clothing tailored to their trade. Bakers wore embroidered aprons. Artists wore colorful scarves. Scholars carried glowing books. Knights polished pearl-white armor. Everything looked peaceful. It wasn't. Hidden beneath all that beauty was a kingdom obsessed with status. And nowhere was that more obvious than inside the royal palace. Princess Seraphine quietly walked down the eastern hallway balancing a tower of dusty history books, almost taller than herself. She wasn't supposed to carry them. Royal servants were. But servants had long ago learned something. If they simply ignored the princess, she would do everything herself. Seraphine never complained, never shouted, never demanded. She simply smiled softly, thanked everyone anyway, and kept walking. Long, silky black fur flowed almost to her waist like velvet beneath the palace lights. Her emerald eyes carried warmth instead of pride. She wore a pastel lavender gown embroidered with tiny silver stars, though most nobles insisted the dress was too plain for a princess. She actually liked it. It reminded her of peaceful evenings, reading beside the palace gardens. As she rounded the corner, crash, books scattered across polished marble. Oh, she dropped to her knees. I'm sorry. The books hadn't fallen because she tripped. Someone had kicked them. Princess Celestina, the eldest daughter of the queen. Cream-colored fur, golden curls, expensive sapphire crown, perfect smile. When adults were watching, without them, she smirked. Oh dear. Celestina covered her mouth dramatically. What a clumsy little sister. Several noble kittens giggled. One whispered loudly enough to hear. She isn't even a real princess. Another laughed. The queen only keeps her around because King Aldrin loved her father. Seraphine quietly gathered the books. It's all right. It wasn't. One small palace maid hurried over. I'll help. Before she could kneel, Celestina snapped her fingers. You have more important duties. The maid froze. She looked apologetically toward Seraphine before lowering her head and leaving. Seraphine smiled anyway. I'll manage. She always did. King Aldrin had remarried years ago after tragedy struck the royal family. Queen Mirabelle entered the kingdom with elegance, confidence, and two daughters, Celestina and Lady Vivica. Officially, Seraphine remained the youngest princess. Unofficially, she became invisible. Her tutors disappeared. Her invitations vanished. Her birthday celebrations quietly stopped. No one announced these changes. They simply happened, little by little, until even visiting nobles forgot there were 3 princesses. Only one creature still visited her every evening. Old Master Rowan, the palace librarian, a silver Persian cat whose whiskers had grown almost as long as his sleeves. You finished another history shelf? Seraphine smiled. I wanted to understand how Queen Aurelia united the kingdoms. Rowan chuckled. Most princesses read fashion scrolls. I like stories. They're more honest. The old librarian blinked. What makes you think that? Stories remember what kingdoms try to forget. Rowan stared quietly, then smiled. Perhaps you'll remember something important one day. That evening the royal family gathered for the annual moonlight banquet. Every noble house attended. Crystal chandeliers floated magically overhead. Music filled the ballroom. Pastel banners fluttered gently without wind. Seraphine entered quietly. No announcement. No applause. Several guests barely noticed. Queen Mirabelle certainly did. There you are. Her smile looked sweet. Her eyes didn't. I thought perhaps you'd stay in the library again. I was invited. Were you? The queen glanced toward the steward. I don't remember approving that. Several nobles exchanged awkward glances. King Aldrin frowned slightly. Mirabelle. She immediately smiled brighter. Oh goodness. Of course she's welcome. She's family. The words sounded perfect. The tone felt cold enough to freeze winter rivers. Seraphine bowed politely. Thank you. Dinner began. Golden soup, honey pastries, fresh berries, crystal tea. Everyone chatted happily. Everyone, except Seraphine. She listened more than she spoke. Nearby, 2 elderly nobles whispered. The northern sanctuary hasn't awakened in decades. They say the ancient crown still waits. For who? No one knows. It only appears to the kingdom's rightful protector. The royal family already rules. The throne and the crown are different things. Seraphine quietly remembered every word. Hours later, music filled the ballroom. Couples danced. Young nobles laughed. Princess Celestina dazzled everyone. Vivica charmed every guest. Seraphine slipped quietly into the moonlit gardens. She preferred flowers to politics. The roses never judged anyone. She knelt beside a tiny blue blossom struggling beneath a broken branch. There! She carefully lifted the branch. The flower stood again. A gentle breeze swept across the garden. Leaves shimmered. For just a second, the moonlight gathered around Seraphine's paws. Tiny silver butterflies formed from glowing dust. They circled her once, before disappearing. High above, hidden among ancient palace towers, an enormous stone lion slowly opened one glowing eye. It had slept, for nearly 600 years. And for the first time since the age of queens, it whispered a single name. Seraphine. The next morning, the palace buzzed with excitement. Not because of Princess Seraphine. Because Queen Mirabelle had announced the royal selection trials. Every 7 years, the kingdom chose one royal heir to represent the crown at the Festival of Dawn. The chosen princess would gain influence over every noble house. Everyone already assumed the winner would be Celestina. After all, she had practiced for years. Servants hurried through marble corridors carrying silk ribbons and polished crystal trophies. Tailors measured gowns. Musicians rehearsed. Knights prepared ceremonial armor. Meanwhile, Seraphine quietly returned books to the library. Master Rowan looked unusually distracted. He kept glancing toward an old, locked cabinet. Is something wrong? The old librarian hesitated. I heard something last night. What was it? A voice. Seraphine tilted her head. A dream. I don't dream anymore. He looked toward the palace windows. I heard the East Guardian speak. She blinked. The stone lions. They've been asleep for centuries. So everyone says. Rowan sighed. But old magic doesn't disappear. It waits. Across the palace, Queen Mirabelle smiled as jewelers adjusted Celestina's crown. My daughter. The kingdom already loves you. Celestina admired herself in the mirror. They should. Vivica folded her arms. And Seraphine? Mirabelle's smile faded. She won't be a problem much longer. That afternoon, every noble family gathered inside the grand hall. Pastel banners floated beneath the stained glass ceiling. Crystal flowers bloomed magically along the walls. Thousands of cats filled the audience. The royal herald stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the selection trials. Thunderous applause erupted. King Aldrin rose. The purpose of these trials has never been strength. It has always been character. Several nobles nodded politely. Few actually believed that. The herald continued. There shall be 3 trials. The trial of wisdom, the trial of courage, and the trial of compassion. Celestina smiled confidently. Compassion? Easy. Or so she thought. The first challenge began inside the Hall of Mirrors. Each contestant entered alone. The mirrors showed memories, not appearances. Many contestants emerged smiling. Others left embarrassed. When Celestina entered, the mirrors reflected lavish parties, admiring crowds, expensive jewels, standing ovations. She grinned proudly. This place knows greatness. Then, one mirror changed. Instead of applause, it showed frightened servants bowing whenever she entered. Another reflected children pretending to like her. Another showed her laughing after embarrassing a palace maid. Her smile disappeared. What is this? The mirrors answered with silence. She stormed out furious. Vivica entered next. The mirrors showed endless competition. Winning. Winning again. Winning everything. But every victory left her standing alone. She frowned, then quickly left. Finally, Seraphine stepped inside. The room became completely silent. Mirror after mirror shimmered. Instead of showing her, they reflected every creature she had ever helped. The gardener whose flowers she secretly watered. The injured bird she rescued during winter. The kitchen apprentice whose mistake she quietly took responsibility for. The lonely stable kitten she taught to read. Even the tiny blue flower from the night before. The mirrors glowed brighter. Then, every reflection turned toward Seraphine and bowed. Outside, a deep rumble shook the palace. The enormous stone lion overlooking the eastern courtyard slowly stood. Dust cascaded from its ancient body. Its sapphire eyes burned with blue light. Nobles screamed. The guardian. It moved. Impossible. The giant lion lowered its head toward only one window. The Hall of Mirrors. Inside, Seraphine looked around in confusion. Did something happen? One final mirror appeared. Unlike the others, it reflected someone wearing an ancient silver crown. The face was blurred, but the eyes were hers. The mirror whispered softly. When the forgotten heart remembers itself, the kingdom remembers its queen. The vision vanished. The judges quickly announced the first results. 3rd place, Vivica. Polite applause. 2nd place, Celestina. Gasps echoed through the hall. Celestina stood frozen. 2nd, impossible. And in 1st place, the herald paused. Princess Seraphine Ashvale. Silence. Utter silence. Then whispers exploded across the audience. The forgotten princess. How? She never trained. Queen Mirabelle's smile disappeared for only a heartbeat. It returned almost instantly. She clapped politely. But beneath the table, her claws dug into the armrest. Hard enough to crack polished wood. She leaned toward Celestina. So, her voice barely rose above a whisper. It seems, our little shadow has become noticeable. Celestina's golden eyes narrowed as she stared across the hall at Seraphine. Then she smiled. Not kindly, not proudly, but with the quiet smile of someone already planning the next move. Crescent Moon, a tiny pause before the adventure continues. Hey, yes you, the one who's still reading instead of pretending to do something productive. You're officially an honorary student of the Midnight Library. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of wonderful cat-loving human these stories are made for. So go ahead and subscribe to Cats&AI and follow along. It tells the creator, please make more cozy magical cat adventures. We're emotionally invested now. Besides, you can't leave Seraphine hanging right before the next trial. That would be like stopping a movie 5 minutes before the dragon shows up. We'll wait. Okay, adventure boots back on? Let's continue. Far beyond the palace, deep inside the forbidden moonroot forest, a second pair of ancient eyes slowly opened. Unlike the stone guardian, these eyes glowed crimson, and somewhere in the darkness, a quiet voice whispered, "So, the ancient crown has finally chosen its heir. Then we must reach her first." The applause faded. The whispers did not. Every noble cat in the grand hall kept stealing glances toward Princess Seraphine, as though seeing her for the very first time. She wished they would stop. Attention had never made her comfortable. Master Rowan approached quietly, his ancient robe swaying behind him. "You've awakened something." Seraphine blinked. "I only completed the trial." "No." He looked toward the palace windows. "You reminded the kingdom." "Of what?" His silver eyes softened. "That kindness is power." Across the hall, Princess Celestina smiled brightly while congratulating the other contestants. "Wonderful performance. You deserved it. So inspiring." Every word sounded genuine. Every smile looked perfect. The moment no one was watching, her expression turned cold. She found Queen Mirabelle waiting in a private sitting room. The doors closed. No one was supposed to choose her. Mirabelle calmly stirred her lavender tea. "They didn't. The guardian did." Celestina paced furiously. "Then we'll simply make sure she loses the next 2 trials." Mirabelle raised one elegant eyebrow. "Careful. Magic is watching now." Celestina stopped. "So what do we do?" The queen smiled. "We don't attack. We encourage." "Encourage." "We'll convince dear little Seraphine to walk exactly where we want." That evening, the palace received unexpected visitors. 3 enormous snowy owls circled above the castle before landing gracefully in the royal courtyard. Every knight immediately knelt. The keepers, the oldest owl, carried a scroll sealed with shimmering silver wax. King Aldrin accepted it carefully. He broke the seal. His expression changed. "The second trial has been moved." Queen Mirabelle frowned. "Moved?" The king nodded slowly. "It will not take place inside the palace." Murmurs spread through the gathered nobles. The contestants must journey into Moonroot Forest. The room fell silent. Moonroot Forest. Every kitten in the kingdom knew the stories. A place where trees whispered, where paths moved, where ancient spirits protected forgotten secrets. Most importantly, no one entered willingly. That night, Seraphine couldn't sleep. She wandered quietly through the palace gardens beneath soft moonlight. The flowers glowed pale blue. Fireflies drifted lazily through the air. Then, crunch! She turned. A tiny fox kitten stood beside the fountain. Its fur shimmered like pastel peach clouds. One paw was injured. "Oh!" Seraphine knelt immediately. "Did you hurt yourself?" The little fox tried walking. It whimpered. Without hesitation, Seraphine removed the silk ribbon from her own sleeve. She gently wrapped the injured paw. "There! It should feel better." The fox looked up at her with enormous golden eyes. It rubbed its tiny head against her paw. Then, it disappeared. Not ran away. Disappeared, as though it had never been there. Behind her, a voice chuckled softly. Most would have chased it. Seraphine turned. An elderly tortoiseshell cat stood beside the roses. She wore moss-green robes embroidered with tiny silver leaves. Her wooden staff glowed faintly. "Who are you?" The old cat smiled. "My name has been forgotten. I prefer it that way." "Were you watching?" "For quite some time." Seraphine looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." The old cat laughed warmly. "You apologize too much." She tapped her staff against the ground. Tiny flowers instantly bloomed around them. "Tell me, if someone never thanked you for your kindness, would you stop being kind?" Seraphine answered without thinking. "No." "Why?" "Because kindness isn't a trade." The old cat's smile widened. "Excellent." The flowers surrounding them suddenly burst into glowing silver butterflies. They circled Seraphine like a tiny galaxy. The mysterious visitor bowed. Then perhaps the stories were true after all. Before Seraphine could ask another question, the old cat faded into sparkling petals carried away by the wind. The following morning, the contestants gathered at the entrance to Moonroot Forest. Towering pastel trees stretched high into the clouds. Their leaves shimmered with shades of mint, peach, lavender, and pale blue. Crystal vines hung from ancient branches. Soft glowing mushrooms lined the winding trail. It was breathtaking and strangely quiet. The royal herald stepped forward. "The trial of courage does not measure strength. It measures your heart. The first contestant to retrieve a moon blossom from the heart spring will advance." He paused. "There is only one rule. Do not ignore anyone asking for help." Several contestants exchanged puzzled looks. Celestina smiled confidently. "Simple enough." The gates opened. Immediately, nearly every contestant sprinted into the forest. Celestina pushed ahead. Vivica followed close behind. Seraphine walked instead. She admired the glowing trees. Listened to singing birds. Watched butterflies dance above the flowers. A squirrel waved enthusiastically from a branch. She waved back. Several contestants rushed past her. "She's going to lose. She's too slow." Seraphine simply smiled. There isn't always a prize for arriving first. Hours later, the forest grew thicker. Mist drifted across the winding paths. Some contestants became hopelessly lost. Others argued over which direction to go. Celestina reached a narrow stone bridge, crossing a sparkling river. On the bridge sat an elderly hedgehog. His wooden cart had broken apart. Moonfruit rolled everywhere. Oh dear, he sighed. My wheels. Celestina glanced toward the distant mountain. She could almost see the heart spring. I'm terribly sorry, but I'm in a competition. She hurried past. Vivica did the same. So unfortunate. Neither looked back. The hedgehog quietly nodded. I understand. Nearly 20 minutes later, Seraphine arrived. Oh, she immediately knelt beside him. Are you hurt? No. My cart simply broke. She smiled. Let's fix it. Together they gathered scattered fruit. She lifted heavy wooden boards, repaired one wheel with fallen branches, even pushed the cart across the bridge herself. The old hedgehog chuckled. You've lost valuable time. Seraphine shrugged. I don't think helping someone is losing time. The old hedgehog's eyes twinkled. I was hoping you'd say that. He stood. His bent back straightened. The old coat vanished. Golden light surrounded him. The tiny hedgehog transformed into a magnificent forest spirit wearing a cloak woven from leaves and starlight. Seraphine gasped. You! I am Bramble, guardian of Moonroot. He smiled kindly. You are the first contestant in over 200 years to stop. He raised one paw. The forest itself responded. Trees gently shifted. Vines curled away. Flowers lit up one after another, revealing a hidden path of glowing silver stones leading deep into the heart of the forest. Bramble bowed. The quickest road has never belonged to the fastest. It belongs to the kindest. Far away, hidden behind tangled vines, a pair of crimson eyes watched everything. A shadowy figure whispered. So the forest has accepted her. A slow smile spread across the mysterious stranger's face. Excellent. That will make taking the ancient crown much more interesting. The hidden stone path shimmered beneath Seraphine's feet. Each glowing stone lit up only after she stepped on it, as though the forest itself welcomed her forward. Above, pastel leaves drifted gently through the air. Tiny birds sang songs no palace musician had ever written. Behind her, the path disappeared. Anyone trying to follow would find only ordinary trees. Elsewhere in Moonroot Forest, Princess Celestina frowned. This isn't right. She had been walking for nearly an hour. Every trail seemed to lead back to the same enormous willow tree. She growled. I know I already passed this. Vivica examined the bark. The carving. It read, the quickest feet rarely find the shortest road. Celestina scoffed. Ridiculous. She stormed away again. 5 minutes later, they were standing beneath the same willow. Again. Meanwhile, Seraphine reached a peaceful clearing unlike anything she had ever seen. The heart spring. Crystal clear water glowed from beneath the earth itself. Pastel lotus flowers floated across its surface. Silver koi fish drifted lazily beneath the water. Above the spring hovered a single flower, the legendary moon blossom. Its petals shimmered between pale lavender, soft blue, blush pink, and pearly white. It was even more beautiful than the old storybooks described. Seraphine stepped forward, then stopped. Someone was crying. She turned. Near the edge of the clearing sat a tiny rabbit kitten. Its little satchel had fallen into the spring. I can't reach it. It belonged to my grandmother. The little rabbit wiped away tears. I promised I'd never lose it. The moon blossom floated only a few steps away. One quick reach, and Seraphine would win. She looked at the flower, then back at the crying kitten. Without hesitation, she removed her shoes, rolled up the sleeves of her gown, and stepped into the icy spring. Oh! The water was colder than snow. She carefully reached beneath the surface. The satchel had become trapped beneath smooth stones. She tugged once, twice. Finally, it came free. She climbed back onto the shore completely soaked. There! The rabbit hugged the satchel tightly. Thank you. You've missed your chance now. Seraphine smiled. I think some things are more important than winning. The rabbit grinned. So do we. We. Golden light exploded across the clearing. The rabbit disappeared. The entire heart spring began glowing brilliantly. The koi transformed into shimmering dragons made of water. The lotus flowers unfolded into stars. The moon blossom floated down by itself. It landed gently, inside Seraphine's paws. A deep voice echoed across the clearing. The trial of courage is complete. Courage is not running toward glory. It is choosing another's happiness before your own. Back at the forest entrance, the herald's crystal orb suddenly illuminated. He stared in disbelief. The winner! He swallowed. Princess Seraphine. The crowd erupted. Again, nobles looked stunned. Some smiled. Others whispered nervously. King Aldrin rose to his feet, unable to hide his pride. Queen Mirabelle applauded politely. Inside, she was furious. 2 trials. 2 victories. This was no longer luck. As the contestants emerged from the forest, citizens lined the streets to cheer. Children waved tiny pastel flags. Princess Seraphine, you were amazing. We heard you helped everyone. A little kitten ran forward holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. They're for you. Seraphine accepted them carefully. They're beautiful. I picked the prettiest ones. I can tell. The kitten beamed with pride. Watching from a palace balcony, Celestina clenched the railings so tightly it cracked. They're cheering for her. Vivica quietly nodded. They've started believing. That evening, Queen Mirabelle invited Seraphine to tea. For the first time in years, the invitation surprised everyone. The royal tea room overlooked endless pastel gardens. Everything appeared peaceful. Mirabelle smiled warmly. My dear, you've grown. Seraphine bowed politely. Thank you. I owe you an apology. Seraphine looked genuinely surprised. For what? I haven't always appreciated your quiet strengths. She poured fragrant rose tea. I've been thinking, if you win the final trial, perhaps it's time you moved into the royal East Wing. Seraphine blinked. My father's old rooms? Exactly. It sounded generous. Too generous. Master Rowan's words echoed in her mind. Magic is watching now. She smiled gently. I appreciate your kindness, but I'm happy where I am. For just a fraction of a second, Queen Mirabelle's smile disappeared. Then it returned. As you wish. Late that night, someone slipped silently through the palace. Not a servant. Not a guard. A shadow. It moved without making a sound, heading straight toward the royal archives beneath the castle. Ancient locks clicked open on their own. Dust swirled through forgotten corridors. The figure stopped before an enormous stone door covered in glowing runes. At its center, a carving of a silver crown. The shadow placed one claw against the door. I've waited centuries. Crimson light seeped through the cracks. Deep inside the chamber, something answered. Not with words. With a heartbeat. Slow. Powerful. Ancient. Far above, asleep in her room, Seraphine suddenly opened her eyes. She placed a paw over her chest. She could feel it too. Somewhere beneath the palace, something had awakened. And whatever it was, it had just realized. She existed. Seraphine sat upright in bed. The heartbeat had stopped, but the feeling remained. It wasn't fear. It felt like someone had called her name without speaking. Outside her window, dawn painted the kingdom in soft shades of peach, lavender, and pale gold. Most mornings, the palace woke to birdsong. This morning, the birds were silent. Far below the castle, the shadow withdrew its paw from the ancient stone door. A crack no wider than a whisker now ran across its surface. Crimson light pulsed faintly from within. So, the figure whispered. The seal is weakening. Behind the shadow, another voice echoed through the darkness. You are impatient. The newcomer stepped into the light. It was the mysterious tortoise-shell cat Seraphine had met in the gardens. Her moss-green robes shimmered softly. The shadow chuckled. Guardian Eloan, so you still live. I could say the same. Eloan rested both paws on her wooden staff. You know the crown cannot be stolen. It can. It has simply never met someone clever enough. The shadow's crimson eyes glowed brighter. The air is young, kind, trusting. She'll open every door herself. Eloan's expression hardened. You mistake kindness for weakness. The shadow smiled. We shall see. With that, it dissolved into black mist. Meanwhile, the royal herald announced the final trial. Every citizen packed the palace courtyard. Colorful banners fluttered overhead. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Musicians played cheerful melodies. The excitement spread through every corner of Luminera. The herald raised his crystal staff. The final trial will begin tomorrow. Excited whispers rippled through the crowd. It is called the Trial of Truth. Silence followed. Many nobles looked uneasy. Truth had a way of making even the wealthiest uncomfortable. Later that afternoon, Seraphine returned to the palace library. Master Rowan was waiting. He looked as though he hadn't slept. I found something. He carefully unfolded an ancient map. Its parchment had turned golden with age. At its center, the royal palace. Beneath it, a hidden chamber. There are tunnels? Seraphine asked. Rowan nodded. Older than the kingdom itself. He pointed toward a faded symbol. A silver crown surrounded by 7 stars. This isn't the royal crown worn during ceremonies. It's older. The ancient crown. Yes. Seraphine traced the symbol carefully. It doesn't belong to whoever sits on the throne. No. It belongs to whoever protects the kingdom. She looked thoughtful. Then why hide it? Rowan smiled sadly. Because power attracts the wrong hearts. That evening, Princess Celestina found Seraphine walking through the palace gardens. For the first time, she approached without an audience. No guards. No servants. Just us. Seraphine smiled politely. Good evening. Celestina folded her paws behind her back. I've been unfair. Seraphine blinked. You have. I was jealous. The words sounded sincere. I spent years preparing. You simply appeared. Seraphine looked surprised. I never wanted to compete with you. I know. Celestina lowered her eyes. That's why everyone likes you. After a long silence, she held out a tiny white flower. A peace offering. Seraphine accepted it. It's beautiful. I picked it myself. High above, hidden on a balcony. Queen Mirabelle watched everything. A satisfied smile spread across her face. Perfect. That night, Seraphine placed the flower beside her bedside lamp. As moonlight filled the room, the petals slowly changed color. White, gray, then deep crimson. The flower released a faint trail of black mist. Seraphine's eyes opened instantly. She stared at it. That's strange. Before she could touch it, a gust of wind burst through the open window. The mysterious fox kitten from Moonroot Forest leaped inside. It growled at the flower. Its fur stood on end. What is it? The fox swatted the flower onto the floor. The blossom shattered like glass. Dark smoke rose from the broken petals. Within the smoke, a tiny whisper echoed. Sleep. Forget. Follow. The fox hissed. The smoke vanished. Seraphine stared in disbelief. That wasn't a flower. The fox shook its head firmly, then looked toward the palace floor. Specifically, toward the hidden chambers beneath them. At the exact same moment, deep below the castle, another crack appeared across the ancient stone door. The heartbeat returned. Louder. Stronger. Boom. 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 Every stone guardian surrounding the palace slowly lifted its head. One. Then another. Then another. Across rooftops, tower walls, garden gates, ancient statues that had remained motionless for centuries opened glowing sapphire eyes. The oldest guardian spoke in a voice like rolling thunder. The air has been marked. Another answered. The prison weakens. A third lowered its massive head toward the palace. The final trial is no longer the greatest danger. Far away, hidden within the shadows of Moonroot Forest, the crimson-eyed stranger stood before a circle of ancient standing stones. One by one, dark figures emerged from the mist. A wolf, a raven, a lynx, a serpent, each cloaked in midnight robes. The stranger smiled. The guardians have awakened. Excellent. They're exactly where we want them. The raven tilted its head. And the princess? The stranger looked toward the glowing palace on the horizon. Tomorrow, she stops being a contestant and becomes our target. The palace had never been so quiet. Not because the kingdom had gone to sleep, because everyone was waiting. Today would decide the future of Luminera. The bells rang exactly 7 times. Soft golden sunlight poured across the castle, painting every tower in warm shades of peach and cream. From every village, from every town, cats gathered outside the palace walls. Families carried picnic baskets. Children wore paper crowns. Street musicians played cheerful melodies. To the citizens, it felt like a festival. To the royal family, it felt like standing before a storm. Seraphine adjusted the silver ribbon around her long black hair. Her pastel lavender dress had been replaced with something simpler. A flowing mint green cloak embroidered with tiny constellations. Master Rowan smiled. You look like yourself. I've never liked dressing to impress. I know. He handed her a tiny leather-bound notebook. My journal. I've been keeping it safe. She smiled. You remembered. I remember everything. The grand courtyard overflowed with thousands of spectators. Floating crystal lanterns drifted overhead despite the daylight. The royal herald stepped onto the marble platform. For hundreds of years, the trial of truth has never been won through strength. It cannot be studied. It cannot be rehearsed. It simply reveals. He raised his crystal staff. The courtyard trembled. Ancient silver runes appeared beneath the contestants' feet. A circle of light expanded outward. At its center, an enormous mirror slowly rose from beneath the palace courtyard. It stood nearly 30 feet tall. Its frame appeared carved from living moonlight. No reflection appeared upon its surface. Only mist. Master Rowan whispered from the audience. The Mirror of Hearts. I thought it was only a legend. The herald spoke once more. The mirror sees only one thing. The truth you refuse to tell yourself. Several contestants swallowed nervously. Celestina looked perfectly calm. She had practiced confidence her entire life. Surely this would be easy. One by one, contestants approached. The mirror glowed. Each stood before it for only a few moments. Some smiled with relief. Others quietly cried. Several noble heirs withdrew from the competition entirely. No one spoke about what they had seen. Finally, Princess Celestina stepped forward. The crowd applauded. She stood tall, elegant, confident. The mirror shimmered. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the mist cleared. Instead of showing a future queen, it showed a tiny kitten, alone, standing outside a classroom while other kittens laughed together inside. Young Celestina reached toward the window. Nobody noticed her. The vision changed. A younger queen Mirabelle appeared. Perfection earns love. Second place earns nothing. Another memory. Celestina practicing until her paws bled. Winning competitions. Receiving praise. Then immediately being handed another challenge. Never a hug. Never enough. The crowd couldn't see the vision. Only Celestina could. Tears gathered in her eyes. No. The mirror whispered. You do not fear losing the throne. You fear believing you were never enough without it. Celestina staggered backward. Her breathing became uneven. For the first time in years, she looked frightened. Not of failure. Of herself. Queen Mirabelle watched silently. Her face never changed. Inside, something twisted. Next, Princess Vivica stepped forward. The mirror revealed endless victories, endless trophies, endless applause, yet every celebration ended the same way. She stood alone. The mirror whispered. Winning became easier. Trusting became impossible. Vivica quietly lowered her head. When she stepped away, she didn't look at anyone. Finally, the herald called. Princess Seraphine Ashvale. A hush swept across the kingdom. Even the birds became silent. Seraphine walked toward the Mirror of Hearts. She stopped before it. The mist swirled gently. Then, instead of showing memories, the mirror reflected the kingdom itself. Children laughing in villages. Farmers harvesting together. Artists painting murals. Teachers reading stories. Families sharing meals. Gardens blooming. Every face smiled peacefully. Then, the image darkened. The skies filled with crimson clouds. Castles crumbled. Ancient forests burned. Stone guardians lay shattered across the earth. The palace collapsed into silence. Seraphine's eyes widened. No! The mirror spoke. This future is possible. But it has not yet been chosen. The vision shifted again. This time, she saw herself, wearing the ancient crown. Not seated upon a throne, but standing beside ordinary citizens, rebuilding homes with her own paws. Laughing with children. Planting trees. Listening instead of commanding. The mirror glowed brilliantly. Its final words echoed across the courtyard. Not just to Seraphine. To everyone. A ruler serves the kingdom. The kingdom does not serve the ruler. The mirror exploded into thousands of glowing butterflies. Gasps erupted throughout the audience. No one had ever seen the mirror of heart speak aloud. Before the herald could announce the winner. A deafening crack echoed beneath the palace. Boom. The marble courtyard lurched violently. Guests stumbled. Crystal lanterns fell from the sky. Another crack. Much louder. Boom. 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 The earth split apart directly beneath the mirror's pedestal. Ancient silver chains burst upward from underground. Not attacking. Breaking. Master Rowan's face turned pale. The seal. Guardian Aloan appeared from the crowd as though she had always been there. It's happening. King Aldrin drew his ceremonial sword. Protect the citizens. Knights rushed forward. Stone guardians leaped from rooftops, landing around the courtyard with thunderous impacts. Children screamed. Parents pulled them to safety. Then, from the darkness beneath the palace, a single crimson paw reached through the shattered earth. Followed by another. Then another. The air grew cold. Every flower in the courtyard closed at once. A calm voice echoed from the depths. So, after 700 years, the prison finally opens. Seraphine stepped forward before anyone else could. Her emerald eyes locked onto the darkness below. Something in the shadows looked back and smiled. The crimson paw gripped the broken stone. Silence swallowed the palace courtyard. Even the wind stopped. The mysterious figure climbed slowly from the darkness beneath the castle. Every movement was graceful, unhurried, confident. When the stranger finally stepped into the sunlight, thousands of cats gasped. She wasn't a monster. She was beautiful, tall, elegant. Long silver-white fur flowed almost to the ground beneath a midnight blue cloak embroidered with tiny crimson stars. A delicate silver mask covered the upper half of her face. Only her glowing crimson eyes remained visible. She looked less like a villain, and more like someone who belonged inside an ancient legend. The stone guardians immediately lowered themselves into defensive stances. Not attacking. Protecting Seraphine. The stranger smiled. So, this is the child they chose. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Seraphine stepped forward. Who are you? The masked cat tilted her head. An excellent question. I've had many names. Most have been forgotten. Master Rowan whispered in horror. No, it can't be. Guardian Aloan closed her eyes. It is. King Aldrin looked between them. You know her. Aloan nodded slowly. The first royal historian. The first keeper of the ancient crown. The one history erased. The stranger laughed softly. Erased. Oh, Aloan. I wrote most of your history. She removed one elegant glove. Across her wrist shimmered an ancient royal crest, older than the kingdom itself. My name is Lady Isolde. A wave of whispers rolled through the crowd. No one's heard that name. For centuries. Seraphine frowned. If you protected the crown, why were you imprisoned? For the first time, Isolde's smile faded. I wasn't. I volunteered. Confused murmurs spread through the audience. King Aldrin lowered his sword slightly. What do you mean? Isolde looked toward the broken ground beneath the palace. 700 years ago, the ancient crown awakened. It warned us. She looked directly at Seraphine. It said a darkness would one day return. The only way to stop it was for someone to guard the crown until its true heir arrived. Master Rowan's eyes widened. You sealed yourself beneath the palace. She nodded. I expected to wait perhaps 20 years. She laughed quietly. Time has a peculiar sense of humor. Seraphine stepped closer. If that's true, why did the prison break? It didn't. Isolde smiled. You called me. I've never been here before. You have. Seraphine looked confused. No, not with your paws. Isolde gently placed one claw over her own heart. With this. Suddenly, the entire courtyard trembled. One of the enormous stone guardians roared. Not in anger. In warning. From beyond the palace walls, dark clouds rolled across the pastel sky. Citizens turned toward the horizon. Something enormous moved inside the clouds. Then another. Then dozens more. Blackbirds. Thousands of them. A swirling flock descended toward the kingdom like a living storm. Children clung to their parents. What are those? Guardian Aloan's face grew pale. The hollow flock. They found us. Without warning. The birds attacked. Not the citizens. The palace. They crashed against stained glass windows. Covered towers. Blotted out the sun. Knights raised shimmering shields. Archers fired glowing arrows. The birds dissolved into smoke whenever struck, only to reform moments later. They're made of shadow. A captain shouted. You can't stop them. Panic spread across the courtyard. Families ran toward shelter. Musicians abandoned their instruments. Servants rushed frightened kittens indoors. Through the chaos, Seraphine noticed something. One elderly baker had fallen. His basket rolled into the open square. He couldn't stand. The flock circled lower. Without hesitation, Seraphine sprinted toward him. "Princess!" King Aldrin shouted. "Stay back!" She ignored him. She reached the old baker, just as shadow birds swooped downward. Before anyone could react, every stone guardian in the courtyard moved at once. 6 gigantic lions leaped between Seraphine and the attack. Their sapphire eyes blazed. They roared together. A wave of brilliant blue light erupted across the palace. The shadow birds scattered like leaves caught in a hurricane. The old baker stared upward in amazement. They protected us." "No," Isolde corrected quietly. "They protected her." The sapphire light slowly faded. Every guardian turned toward Seraphine. One by one, the colossal statues bowed. Not to the king. Not to the queen. Not to the ancient crown. To her. The entire kingdom watched in stunned silence. Queen Mirabelle's teacup slipped from her paws and shattered across the marble steps. Celestina whispered, "They've accepted her." Vivica looked toward Seraphine with something she had never felt before. Not envy. Respect. High above, the flock suddenly parted. A deep laugh echoed through the clouds. The crimson-eyed stranger from Moonroot Forest stepped onto the palace roof. No mask. No disguise. He was a towering lynx with sleek midnight fur and glowing amber eyes, wrapped in a cloak that seemed woven from living shadow. He looked down at Isolde and smiled. "So, you finally left your cage." Isolde's calm expression hardened. "I hoped you would never return." The lynx spread his arms. 7 centuries. I've waited very patiently." He looked directly at Seraphine. "And now, the crown's heir stands exactly where prophecy promised." His smile widened, which means the game can finally begin. A bolt of black lightning split the sky. The palace bells rang wildly on their own. Far beneath the castle, deep inside the hidden chamber, the ancient crown lifted itself from its stone pedestal for the very first time in 700 years. It floated silently into the air, waiting. The ancient crown floated silently above its stone pedestal. No one touched it. No one commanded it. It simply waited. Deep beneath the palace, silver light filled the forgotten chamber, flowing through ancient carvings that had slept for 700 years. Above ground, every cat felt it. The air itself seemed to hum. The midnight-furred lynx stood atop the palace roof, his shadowy cloak rippling in a wind no one else could feel. "My name," he announced calmly, "is Lord Vesper." Several of the oldest scholars gasped. Master Rowan nearly dropped his notebook. "The exile." King Aldrin frowned. "You know him." Rowan nodded slowly. "There are only fragments left. History claimed he vanished before the First Kingdom." Vesper smiled. "History has always been edited." Isolde stepped forward. "You should have stayed hidden and missed this reunion." Vesper chuckled. "I've waited centuries. I wasn't about to be late." He looked directly at Seraphine. "You've caused quite a stir." Seraphine met his gaze without flinching. "I don't even know you." "No, but I know you. You carry something very old." She tilted her head. "I carry nothing. Not yet." Without warning, Vesper raised one paw. Dark mist poured from the palace roof like flowing ink. Instead of attacking, it spread across the courtyard floor. Children watched nervously as the mist curled around flowers. The blossoms didn't die. They simply forgot how to bloom. Their petals folded closed. Their colors faded. Pastel pink became gray. Lavender became ash. Mint green became dull silver. Gasps spread through the crowd. "What is he doing?" Guardian Alolan whispered. "He's stealing memories." The mist reached a tiny sparrow perched on the palace fountain. The little bird suddenly stopped singing. It blinked, looked around in confusion, then quietly flew away, as though it had forgotten why it had come. Seraphine watched with growing concern. "The flowers, the bird, they're not hurt." Isolde nodded. "No, they're forgetting who they are." Vesper smiled. "Pain heals. Wounds close. But forgotten hope is much harder to restore." King Aldrin raised his sword. "Enough!" Royal knights charged forward. Hundreds of polished shields flashed beneath the morning sun. The captain shouted, "Protect the kingdom!" They surrounded Vesper from every direction. The lynx sighed. "You really should stop solving ancient problems with pointy objects." He snapped his fingers. The shadows beneath every knight stretched upward. Not to attack, to imitate. Each knight suddenly found themselves facing a perfect shadow version of themselves. The copies drew identical swords, matched identical stances. Every movement mirrored perfectly. The courtyard erupted into confusion. "I can't tell which one is real." Neither could anyone else. Meanwhile, Seraphine noticed something strange. The shadow copies never looked at anyone else. Only the night they reflected. She frowned. "They're mirrors." Master Rowan looked toward her. "What?" "They aren't enemies. They're distractions." One young knight heard her. Instead of fighting, he lowered his sword. His shadow did the same. He stepped backward. The copy vanished. Another knight copied him. Then another. Within seconds, half the shadow army disappeared. The captain laughed. She's right. Stop fighting yourselves. The remaining knights lower their weapons. Every shadow dissolved into harmless mist. The crowd burst into relieved applause. Even Vesper smiled. Interesting. You solve problems differently. High above, the ancient crown suddenly glowed brighter. Far beneath the palace, its silver light reached upward through hidden tunnels like roots searching for sunlight. Queen Mirabelle watched everything unfold. Something inside her finally broke. She quietly stepped away from the crowd. No one noticed. Except Celestina. Mother! Mirabelle kept walking. Stay here. But, please. It wasn't an order. It sounded tired. Celestina had never heard that tone before. Mirabelle wandered alone through the palace gardens. She stopped beside an old cherry blossom tree. Its petals drifted lazily around her. She stared at them for a long time. Then, very softly, she whispered, I only wanted them to be safe. Behind her, Guardian Alone appeared. You confused safety with control. Mirabelle closed her eyes. I know. I kept telling myself that if my daughters were perfect, nothing could hurt them. And Seraphine? A long silence followed. Finally, the queen answered. I convinced myself that ignoring one child would make the other stronger. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I was wrong. Back in the courtyard, Vesper looked toward the palace gardens. He smiled knowingly. The first heart remembers. Isolde frowned. What have you done? Nothing. I merely create opportunities. He looked toward Seraphine again. The greatest battles are never fought with armies. They're fought inside families. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of silver light erupted from beneath the palace. It shot high into the sky before gently spreading across the kingdom like the branches of an enormous glowing tree. Every citizen looked upward. The light touched every village, every forest, every river. Then, one by one, ancient symbols appeared across the kingdom. On mountain cliffs, inside forgotten temples, along hidden caves, every symbol pointed toward the palace. Master Rowan's eyes widened. The 7 sanctuaries, they've awakened. Isolde's calm expression became serious. So soon, Seraphine looked at her. What are the 7 sanctuaries? Isolde answered quietly. They are the places where the first guardians made their vows. She looked toward the glowing horizon. The ancient crown isn't calling you underground anymore. It's calling you on a journey. Vesper smiled from the palace roof. Excellent. Because that's exactly where I've been hoping you'd go. Far away, beyond the borders of Luminera, the first sanctuary answered the crown's light. An enormous crystal tree, hidden for centuries within a valley of pastel blossoms, slowly opened its glowing sapphire leaves. Something ancient stirred inside its roots. And somewhere within the tree, a gentle voice whispered, The heir is coming. The silver light stretching across Luminera did not fade. It lingered in the sky like the roots of a glowing tree, connecting every mountain, forest, river, and village to the royal palace. No one had ever seen magic like it. Children pointed excitedly. Artists dropped their paintbrushes just to watch. Even the oldest scholars admitted they had no explanation. Only Isolde seemed unsurprised. The crown has awakened the ancient paths. Master Rowan swallowed. So the stories were all true. They were always true. We simply stopped believing them. Inside the throne room, the royal council gathered in urgent session. Every noble house had sent representatives. Voices filled the chamber. This journey is too dangerous. Send the royal guard. No. Seal the sanctuaries. Destroy them if necessary. King Aldrin finally stood. His deep voice silenced everyone. The sanctuaries protected this kingdom long before our families existed. We will not destroy what we do not understand. The council reluctantly quieted. Then, a gentle knock echoed from the great doors. Seraphine entered. Every conversation stopped. It still felt strange. A week ago, many of these nobles barely remembered her name. Now, every eye followed her. She bowed respectfully. You wish to see me? King Aldrin smiled warmly. Come. He motioned toward the glowing map projected above the round table. 7 brilliant stars shimmered across Luminera. One star pulsed brighter than the rest. The crystal sanctuary. Isolde nodded. The first sanctuary. The crown wants you there. Seraphine looked around the room. Then I'll leave today. Several nobles immediately protested. Alone? Absolutely not. It could be a trap. Isolde quietly smiled. It almost certainly is. The room became silent again. Outside the palace, the kingdom had already begun preparing. Not soldiers, citizens. An elderly baker approached carrying a cloth bundle. I baked these this morning. Sweet berry rolls. They stay fresh for days. A young tailor handed Seraphine a beautifully stitched pastel blue travel cloak. My grandmother said travelers should always carry hope on their shoulders. The village blacksmith presented a simple silver compass. It doesn't point north. It points home. Seraphine looked overwhelmed. You don't have to give me these. The baker laughed. We know. That's why we want to. Tears shimmered in Seraphine's emerald eyes. She carefully accepted every gift. Thank you. I'll treasure them. Nearby, Celestina watched quietly. For the first time, She didn't feel jealous. She felt curious. Vivica walked beside her. They don't admire her because she's perfect. Celestina nodded slowly. They admire how she makes everyone else feel. Neither sister noticed Queen Mirabelle standing behind them. She heard every word. That afternoon, a small group gathered at the palace gates. Seraphine, Master Rowan, Guardian Aloan, Isolde, and the tiny pastel fox. The little creature proudly sat beside Seraphine's boots. King Aldrin laughed softly. I suppose we have one more traveler. The fox lifted its chin proudly. Everyone smiled. As they prepared to leave, a familiar voice called out, Wait! Princess Celestina hurried toward them. She carried a neatly wrapped package. She looked uncomfortable. I made this. She handed it to Seraphine. Inside was a hand-painted journal with pressed flowers decorating the cover. Seraphine smiled brightly. You painted this? Celestina nodded awkwardly. When we were younger, you used to fill notebooks with stories. I remembered. For several quiet seconds, neither princess spoke. Then Seraphine stepped forward and hugged her. Celestina froze. She clearly hadn't expected it. Slowly, very slowly, she hugged her back. Watching from the palace steps, Queen Mirabelle wiped away another tear. The journey began beneath a warm pastel sky. Rolling green hills stretched endlessly ahead. Wildflowers danced beside the winding road. Butterflies fluttered around the travelers. For the first time in centuries, someone was walking the path of the 7 sanctuaries. Several hours later, the peaceful road entered Whispering Meadow. Tall grass swayed like gentle ocean waves. Tiny crystal insects buzzed lazily between flowers. Everything felt calm. Too calm. The little fox suddenly stopped walking. Its ears stood upright. It growled softly. Isolde immediately raised one paw. Everyone stop. Master Rowan looked around nervously. What is it? Nobody answered. The wind had disappeared. No birds. No insects. Nothing. Then, a voice drifted through the meadow. Help! It sounded like a frightened kitten. Please! Someone! Seraphine immediately stepped toward the sound. Aloan gently caught her arm. Wait! The voice came again. I can't move. Master Rowan frowned. I don't like this. The cry echoed from somewhere deeper within the tall grass. Then, a second voice. This one belonged to an elderly cat. Over here. We're trapped. A third voice. A child. I'm scared. The meadow suddenly filled with desperate cries from every direction. Seraphine's heart pounded. We have to help them. Isolde nodded slowly. Yes. But first, she knelt and picked a single blue flower growing beside the path. She tossed it toward the nearest cry for help. The flower flew through empty air, then struck something invisible. The illusion shattered like glass. The desperate voices vanished. Standing where the crying kitten had seemed to be, was a tall creature made entirely of woven vines and glowing moss. Its eyes opened slowly, golden, gentle. It smiled. Excellent. More vine creatures emerged from the tall grass. None looked threatening. Instead, they bowed. The first one spoke in a warm, ancient voice. Many travelers rush toward every cry. Others ignore them all. It takes wisdom to know the difference. Seraphine blinked. You were testing us. The guardian nodded. The first sanctuary protects truth. It cannot be entered by those who mistake panic for compassion. He stepped aside. The tall grass parted on its own. Beyond it stood an enormous valley glowing with pastel blossoms. At its center, the crystal tree towered into the heavens. Its sapphire leaves sparkled like stars. Silver streams flowed around its roots. And nestled within the trunk, something shimmered. Not an object. Not a treasure. A memory. The crystal tree was waiting. Not to give Seraphine power, but to show her something she had never known about herself. The valley was impossibly beautiful. Pastel blossoms stretched to the horizon like a living quilt of pink, lavender, mint, and pale blue. Crystal butterflies drifted lazily through the air. Tiny streams sparkled beneath graceful stone bridges. At the center stood the crystal tree. It rose higher than the palace towers. Its trunk shimmered like polished quartz. Its sapphire leaves glowed softly, filling the valley with peaceful light. Every breeze made the branches sing. Not rustle. Sing. It sounded like hundreds of gentle voices humming together. Seraphine stood speechless. I've never seen anything this beautiful. Master Rowan quietly wiped his glasses. Neither has anyone else for 700 years. The vine guardian stepped aside. The first sanctuary welcomes the air. No gates opened. No bridges appeared. The tree simply waited, as if deciding whether to trust her. Seraphine slowly approached. Halfway there, the little pastel fox suddenly ran ahead. Instead of stopping beneath the tree, it sat respectfully. Its tail curled neatly around its paws. It lowered its head, almost like it was greeting an old friend. The crystal tree responded. One glowing branch gently lowered toward the tiny fox. A single sapphire leaf landed softly on its nose. The fox sneezed. Everyone laughed. Even Isolde smiled. It remembers him. Seraphine blinked. Him! Isolde nodded. The forest spirits have many forms. The fox looked proudly at Seraphine. She laughed. So you've been pretending to be an ordinary fox this whole time. The little fox looked dramatically offended. Master Rowan chuckled. I don't think he likes being called ordinary. As Seraphine reached the roots, the entire valley fell silent. Every butterfly landed. Every flower turned toward her. Even the stream seemed to slow. The crystal tree gently touched her forehead with one glowing branch. Immediately, the world disappeared. She found herself standing in a small village. Not the palace, not the capital. A quiet farming town. Simple cottages lined dirt roads. Children chased one another through fields. Everything looked peaceful. Then, she saw herself. Only, she wasn't a princess. She looked about 6 years old. Tiny, wide-eyed, laughing. She was sitting beside another kitten beneath an apple tree. A little gray tabby. You'll always be my best friend. Young Seraphine smiled. I promise. The gray kitten laughed. And you'll visit me even if you become a queen someday. I don't want to be queen. I want adventures. The memory faded. Seraphine frowned. I don't remember this. Another memory appeared. Storm clouds. Rain. Royal carriages arriving. Royal guards. A hurried farewell. The little gray kitten ran after the carriage. Wait! Seraphine! Young Seraphine pressed against the carriage window, crying, trying to reach back. The carriage disappeared into the rain. The memory dissolved. Seraphine whispered, I forgot. Master Rowan's voice echoed gently through the vision. Not forgot. It was taken. The crystal tree revealed another memory. Queen Mirabelle, years younger, standing beside King Aldrin. He'll never adjust. The king looked worried. She misses her village. Mirabelle sighed. Then let her. Children eventually forget. Seraphine's heart sank. Forget. Someone had chosen not to help her remember. The vision shifted again. She saw herself years later, walking lonely palace hallways, reading books, helping strangers, smiling despite everything. The crystal tree whispered, Your memories faded. Your heart did not. Tears rolled down Seraphine's cheeks. The vision ended. She opened her eyes. She was back beneath the crystal tree. Everyone waited quietly. Master Rowan looked concerned. What did you see? Seraphine smiled sadly. I remembered. Someone I promised I'd never forget. Suddenly, a tiny voice called out, Seraphine! Everyone turned. At the edge of the valley stood a young gray tabby wearing a simple travel cloak. She stared in disbelief. It really is you. Seraphine froze. No. The tabby smiled through tears. You still wrinkle your nose when you're trying not to cry. Seraphine's eyes widened. Lena! The gray tabby laughed. You remembered. Without another word, the two friends ran toward each other. They embraced beneath the crystal tree. For a long moment, neither could speak. Finally, Lena smiled. I looked for you every spring. I came back to the apple tree. Every year. I hoped. Maybe one day, you'd remember. Seraphine hugged her tighter. I'm so sorry. You don't have to apologize. You came back. Nearby, even Isolde looked emotional. The crystal tree never restores memories. Iloan looked puzzled. It doesn't. No. It only reveals what already survives. Master Rowan smiled warmly. So their friendship never disappeared. It simply waited. As the reunion continued, the crystal tree suddenly glowed brighter. One crystal fruit slowly grew from its highest branch. It shimmered with swirling silver light. The fruit gently floated downward. It landed in Seraphine's paws. The vine guardians knelt. The sanctuary has accepted you. This is the crystal seed. It is not a weapon. It is a promise. Seraphine looked at the glowing seed. What does it do? The oldest guardian smiled. When the time is right, it will remind an entire kingdom of what it has forgotten. Far beyond the valley, hidden atop a distant cliff, Lord Vesper watched through a pool of living shadow. He smiled. So, she has claimed the first gift. Behind him, one of his cloaked followers spoke. Shall we stop her before she reaches the second sanctuary? Vesper shook his head. No. Let her continue. The follower looked confused. But she'll grow stronger. Vesper's amber eyes reflected the silver light of the crystal tree. Exactly. Because only when every sanctuary has accepted her can the ancient crown reveal its greatest secret. He smiled toward the glowing horizon. And that's the moment I've been waiting 700 years to see. The crystal seed pulsed softly in Seraphine's paws. Its silver glow was warm, comforting, almost alive. When she looked closely, tiny lights swirled inside it like distant stars. Lena smiled. The elders always said the crystal tree never gives gifts. It gives responsibilities. Seraphine carefully tucked the seed into the small satchel King Aldrin had given her before the journey. I'll protect it. The crystal tree's branches rustled gently, almost as though they had heard. The travelers remained in the sanctuary until sunset. For the first time in many years, Seraphine simply enjoyed herself. She and Lena wandered through fields of glowing flowers. They laughed about childhood adventures, about climbing apple trees, about getting hopelessly lost chasing butterflies. Master Rowan smiled from a nearby bench. I haven't seen her laugh like this. Isolde nodded. Neither has she. As evening settled over the valley, the crystal tree suddenly released thousands of glowing leaves. Instead of falling, they floated upward. Each leaf became a tiny lantern. The entire night sky sparkled with soft sapphire lights. The vine guardians bowed. The sanctuary celebrates. Lena whispered. It remembers every reunion. Much later, when everyone else had gone to sleep, Seraphine sat alone beneath the crystal tree. She looked toward the stars. So much has happened. I still don't understand why the crown chose me. A familiar voice answered from above. It didn't. She looked up. Lord Vesper sat casually on one of the crystal tree's enormous branches, as though he had been there all evening. He wasn't smiling. He simply watched the stars. Surprisingly, the tree hadn't tried to stop him. Seraphine stood immediately. How did you get here? I walked. The guardians would have stopped you. They tried. He shrugged lightly. We reached an agreement. Before Seraphine could respond, the oldest vine guardian emerged from the shadows. To her astonishment, he bowed respectfully toward Vesper. Traveler. Vesper inclined his head politely. Guardian. Seraphine blinked. You know each other? The guardian smiled. We've known one another for a very long time. Seraphine looked between them. I don't understand. Vesper jumped gracefully from the branch. He landed without making a sound. The kingdom believes every story needs a hero and a villain. He looked toward the crystal tree. Ancient magic is rarely that simple. You attacked the palace. I tested the kingdom. You frightened everyone, so they would wake up. Seraphine frowned. There are gentler ways. Vesper laughed quietly. I was hoping you'd say that. The crystal tree suddenly shimmered. Its trunk opened slightly, not revealing treasure. A room. Inside stood 7 empty stone pedestals arranged in a circle. Only one glowed, the pedestal nearest Seraphine. The crystal seed floated from her satchel on its own. It settled gently onto the first pedestal. Immediately, the entire chamber lit up. Silver vines spread across the floor. Ancient writing appeared along the walls. Master Rowan, awakened by the light, hurried inside. His jaw dropped. The Chamber of Promises. I've only read fragments. Isolde entered moments later. Her expression softened. So, it still exists. Seraphine looked around. What is this place? Isolde gently touched one of the empty pedestals. Each sanctuary leaves behind a gift. When all 7 gifts stand together, the ancient crown will finally awaken completely. Master Rowan frowned. So we only have 1. Yes. And 6 remain. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Not violently. Gently. The crystal seed projected a glowing map into the air. 7 stars appeared once more. The first sanctuary glowed brightly. Then, a second star began shining. Far to the north, high in snow-covered mountains, the image slowly zoomed inward. A frozen monastery rested atop impossible cliffs. Wind carried thousands of shimmering snowflakes around towering ice sculptures shaped like graceful cats. The words beneath the image glowed softly. The Sanctuary of Echoes. Guardian Alolan whispered. The Mountain of Whispering Snow. I thought it had disappeared. Lena looked toward Seraphine. So, I suppose this is goodbye again. Seraphine smiled. No. Lena blinked. No. I've spent enough years losing friends. She held out her paw. Come with us. Lena looked completely stunned. I don't have magic. You have courage. I've never fought monsters. We're not collecting warriors. Seraphine laughed. We're collecting good hearts. Master Rowan chuckled. I believe our little expedition just became larger. Lena smiled, so brightly that the crystal tree itself seemed to glow a little brighter. I'd love to. At sunrise, the travelers prepared to leave. Before they reached the valley entrance, the oldest vine guardian called after them. There is one warning. Everyone turned. The second sanctuary does not test kindness. It tests truth. He looked directly at Seraphine. There. You may meet someone wearing your face. A cool breeze swept through the valley. Lena looked puzzled. Wearing her face. The guardian nodded once. The mountain remembers every choice a heart could have made. He lowered his head. Not every version of ourselves is someone we wish to meet. Far above the clouds, snow began falling across the distant northern peaks. And hidden deep within the frozen monastery, a pair of emerald eyes slowly opened. They looked exactly like Seraphine's, but unlike hers, they held no warmth at all. Snow fell without making a sound. The journey north took many days, yet none of the travelers spoke much after leaving the crystal sanctuary. The vine guardian's warning lingered in every mind. You may meet someone wearing your face. Ahead, the mountain of whispering snow pierced the clouds. Frozen waterfalls shimmered like glass. Pastel blue pines lined the cliffs. At the summit stood an ancient monastery carved entirely from crystal ice. Not a single footprint surrounded it. It looked as though time itself had forgotten the place. The sanctuary doors opened before Seraphine touched them. No guardian greeted her. No challenge was announced. Only silence. Inside stood hundreds of mirrors carved from polished ice. Each reflected a different future. Master Rowan whispered, I've never read about this room. Isolde frowned. Neither have I. The mirrors began glowing. One by one they faded, until only a single reflection remained. Seraphine stared. The cat looking back at her wore the ancient crown. But something was different. Her eyes were cold. Her smile was proud. Her kingdom behind her was magnificent, yet completely silent. No laughter. No music. Only obedience. The reflection stepped out of the mirror. She was real. You could become me. Her voice was identical to Seraphine's. You've earned everyone's love. Now imagine earning their fear. They would never betray you. Seraphine shook her head. That's not respect. It's control. The reflection laughed. And what's wrong with that? You've spent your whole life being ignored. You never have to feel invisible again. Around the room, every mirror showed the same future. Seraphine sitting alone upon a perfect throne. Powerful. Admired. Completely alone. The reflection stepped closer. You deserve everything. Seraphine quietly smiled. No. I deserve people who smile because they're happy, not because they're afraid. The reflection hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Seraphine gently reached out her paw. I don't hate you. You were simply the version of me that forgot why kindness mattered. The reflection slowly looked down. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then she smiled. A real smile. Thank you. She dissolved into thousands of tiny snowflakes. Every frozen mirror shattered into silver light. The monastery trembled. Outside, the 6 remaining sanctuaries answered at once. Across deserts, ancient temples awakened. Deep beneath the sea, crystal reefs glowed. Within hidden forests, sleeping guardians opened their eyes. Golden deserts bloomed with flowers. Sky islands lit the heavens. The 7 sanctuaries had never been separate. They had always been connected. Because Seraphine had passed the trial of truth, the remaining 6 gifts accepted her together. Around the crystal seed floated 6 new lights. Hope, wisdom, compassion, courage, humility, joy. The 7 gifts merged into a single radiant sphere. The ancient crown answered. Far beneath the palace, it rose into the sky. Lord Vesper stood alone upon a snowy ridge. He smiled peacefully. So, you finally understand. Seraphine approached him. You never wanted the crown. No. You wanted someone worthy to awaken it. He nodded. 700 years ago. The crown chose me. I refused. Why? Because I wanted to rule. I thought power could create peace. He looked toward the horizon. I was wrong. So I asked a soul to seal the crown away. Until someone arrived who wanted to serve instead of rule. You became the villain. So the true heir would one day appear. Vesper smiled. History remembers me as a monster. I can live with that. The sky suddenly filled with silver light. The ancient crown floated above them. For a moment, it hovered before Vesper. He simply bowed. It was never mine. The crown drifted gently to Seraphine. It settled above her head. Not like jewelry, like starlight. Every one of the 7 gifts became part of it. The crown glowed brilliantly. Then, it disappeared. No golden jewels. No heavy metal. Only a tiny silver star remained upon Seraphine's forehead. The crown. She whispered. It's gone. Isolde smiled. It was never meant to be worn. It was meant to become part of the one who earned it. When Seraphine returned to Luminera, no trumpets played. No grand parade waited. Instead, something far more beautiful. The entire kingdom had gathered along the road. Farmers, teachers, artists, bakers, gardeners, children holding tiny bouquets of pastel flowers. As Seraphine entered the city, no one bowed. Instead, they smiled. She smiled back. Welcome home. Inside the palace, Queen Mirabelle waited alone. The moment Seraphine entered, the queen slowly removed her own royal crown. She placed it upon the throne, then walked toward Seraphine. I owe you something. She lowered herself onto one knee. An entire palace gasped. I'm sorry. For every day I failed to be the mother you deserved. The room fell silent. Seraphine gently helped her stand. I can't change yesterday. Mirabelle nodded through tears. I know, but perhaps I can earn tomorrow. Seraphine hugged her. This time, neither of them let go quickly. Celestina approached next. I've been thinking. Seraphine smiled. That's usually a good sign. Celestina laughed. I don't want to be remembered as the princess who almost became queen. What do you want? She looked toward the kingdom beyond the palace windows. I want to open schools. For every kitten. So no one feels invisible. Seraphine's eyes sparkled. I think that's a wonderful dream. Vivica smiled. I'll help. And I'll rebuild the royal hospitals. The sisters looked at one another. For the first time, not as rivals, as family. Master Rowan reopened the great library. Every child in the kingdom was welcome. No entrance fees. No titles required. Only curiosity. He placed a small wooden sign above the door. Every story matters. Lena planted a new apple tree beside the palace gardens. Every spring, she and Seraphine shared tea beneath its branches, just as they had promised long ago. The little pastel fox visited often, though no one ever managed to discover where it disappeared between visits. It seemed to enjoy the mystery. As for Lord Vesper, he quietly left before sunrise. No celebration, no farewell. Only a single letter remained in the library. Master Rowan smiled after reading it. What does it say? Seraphine asked. He folded it carefully. It says, the kingdom no longer needs someone to guard its future from the shadows. Take good care of it. No one ever saw Vesper again. But every now and then, travelers claimed they met a kind stranger who quietly repaired broken bridges, planted trees, or helped lost children find their way home before disappearing into the morning mist. Whether those stories were true, no one could say. Years passed. Luminera became known not as the richest kingdom, nor the strongest, but the kindest. Visitors often asked why everyone seemed so happy. The answer was always the same. Our queen taught us something. Real crowns aren't worn on your head. They're carried in your heart. And every evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft shades of pink, lavender, and gold, Queen Seraphine would walk through the gardens without guards or ceremony, greeting every citizen she met by name. Because she had never forgotten the lesson that changed her life. A kingdom becomes extraordinary, not when its ruler sits above everyone else, but when its ruler walks beside them. The end.